My name is Sylvia Varnham O'Regan. I'm a New Zealand journalist living in New York, and my story looks at the growing number of New Zealanders who are being deported from Australia. I first got interested in this issue back in 2014. I was working as a news reporter in Australia, and I was writing a lot about immigration. And around that time, the Australian government amended its migration laws and basically expanded its power to cancel the visas of foreign nationals who had served 12 months or more in prison or were deemed a security risk. And New Zealanders were disproportionately affected by these changes by quite a high margin, and they're now the largest group of people inside Australian immigration detention centres. The reasons for this are quite complex and in part date back to 2001 when the Australian government amended its citizenship laws and made it really hard for New Zealanders living there to get citizenship. So thousands and thousands of New Zealanders kept moving over to Australia because the countries have relatively free movement established on either side. But those who came after 2001 couldn't access citizenship. So they lived permanently on these temporary visas. And in the years that followed, there were further restrictions introduced on New Zealanders, and they meant that New Zealanders couldn't really access unemployment or disability support and couldn't access student loans for university. And these changes basically resulted in a lot of people saying that New Zealanders were being unfairly treated. And some of these similar charges have come up in recent years in light of the deportation issue, which is something that I'm really interested in and have been covering ever since. The Australian government, I should add, says that these policies were introduced simply to protect Australia and its citizens. And the New Zealand Prime Minister, who I interviewed for the story, told me that she respected the Australian government's right to set its own immigration policies. She did, however, say that she felt that more weight should be given to the family ties that people have in Australia before the decision is made to deport them. Because a lot of people who have been sent back have lived for a number of years in Australia, and in some cases their whole lives. So the question becomes, who is responsible for them? And at what point does the country where you're born cease to matter the most, the place where you're born? So I wanted to look at these issues again in light of recent developments, including the detention of a 17-year-old New Zealander, who in fact is the youngest New Zealander to be caught in this policy. And while little details are known about him or his situation because of his age and identification laws around young people, the case has caused some alarm amongst New Zealand officials. Another dimension of the story that I really wanted to look at was the impact on the ground in New Zealand. Because of course New Zealand is now having to receive a lot of deportees who have no support systems in place there and might be quite disoriented when they come back. They also run quite a high risk of reoffending, and in fact an information request that I submitted for the story showed that around 25% of deportees who've come back to New Zealand have in fact reoffended. So the government there is faced with some really complex challenges in regard to caring for these deportees and assisting their integration back into New Zealand life, whilst also protecting New Zealand citizens also. So I really hope that my story managed to capture the nuance and complexity of this issue, and I'm extremely grateful for the funding that I received to report this story. Thanks very much. Hope you like it.